A July 20th, 1969, a date etched in our collective memory as the day man first walked on the moon. The 1960s was a time of fierce competition between the United States and the Soviet Union, a rivalry that extended beyond politics and into the realm of space exploration. This was the space race, an era defined by technological prowess and national pride. And at the heart of it all was NASA, the American space agency that held the monumental task of achieving what seemed like the impossible, landing a man on the moon. The stakes were high, the world was watching, and the pressure was immense. But amidst the applause and accolades that followed Neil Armstrong's iconic "one small step," whispers of doubt began to surface. Questions swirled around the authenticity of the moon landing. Was it a historical achievement or a carefully crafted deception? But did the political pressure lead to one of the greatest deceptions in history? As intriguing as the moon landing was, skeptics point to anomalies in the lunar footage. They argue that the very shadows cast by the astronauts and the lunar module itself seem inconsistent. According to basic physics, light from a single source, like the sun, should cast shadows in one direction only. However, in the Apollo footage, shadows appear to diverge, suggesting multiple light sources, much like a studio setup. Then there's the iconic image of the American flag, seemingly fluttering in the lunar breeze. Yet, we know there's no air in the moon's atmosphere, and hence, no wind to cause such movement. Some propose the flag's apparent motion is due to the kinetic energy transferred from the astronauts handling it. But others are not so easily swayed. These inconsistencies fuel debates on the authenticity of the mission. They stir the pot of controversy, making us question what we've been told about that historic moon landing. Adding to the controversy is the issue of the Van Allen radiation belt. Imagine two giant donuts of seething radiation encircling our planet. These are the Van Allen belts, named after their discoverer, James Van Allen. They are zones of energetic charged particles, most of which originate from the solar wind that is captured by and held around Earth by our planet's magnetic field. Now, here's where the plot thickens. Critics argue that passing through these belts would have been lethal for the astronauts. The intensities within the belts are indeed sufficient to pose a threat to human life. But would the Apollo missions have exposed the astronauts to these deadly levels of radiation? NASA maintains that the trajectory of the Apollo missions was designed to minimize exposure. But skeptics aren't convinced. They question, with the technology available at the time, could the astronauts have survived this perilous journey? In the midst of these debates, other pieces of evidence come under scrutiny as well. Among these are the lunar photographs, a stark, barren landscape against the profound darkness of space. Yet, curiously, not a single star punctuates this darkness. Critics argue that the absence of stars is a major oversight in NASA's alleged fabrication, as the moon's lack of atmosphere should make them highly visible. But the mysteries don't stop there. Over 700 boxes of original transmission tapes from the Apollo missions are reported to have vanished. These tapes, which would have offered the highest quality footage of the moon landing, have been lost, according to NASA. This loss has fueled speculations and given rise to numerous conspiracy theories. Could it be that the content of these tapes didn't align with the narrative NASA wanted to portray? With such evidence missing, skeptics question if the truth was too inconvenient to show. Then there is the question of technology. The 1960s were an era of technological revolution, but could the technology of the time really send humans to the moon and back? It's a conundrum that has experts scratching their heads. Some argue that the computers used by NASA were less powerful than today's smartphones, raising doubts about their ability to navigate such a complex mission. Others point to the remarkable engineering and innovation of the Apollo spacecraft and the Saturn Alpha rocket, stating that while technology was primitive by today's standards, it was sufficient for the task at hand. The debate also extends to the lunar module, with skeptics questioning its capability to withstand the harsh lunar environment and safely transport the astronauts. As we delve deeper into the moon landing mystery, we find that experts remain divided, with some claiming the feat impossible with the era's technology. Yet not everyone agrees with these theories. There's a whole host of counterarguments and recent scientific analyses that aim to debunk these moon landing conspiracies. For instance, some suggest the supposed anomalies in the footage can be explained by the unique lunar environment and the technology available at the time. As for the Van Allen radiation belt, experts argue that the astronauts' trajectory was carefully planned to avoid the most dangerous areas of radiation. And about the missing tapes and the lack of stars? Well, the tapes were reportedly reused due to a tape shortage, and the stars were simply too faint to be captured by the cameras used. Moreover, advancements in technology and our understanding of physics have allowed for detailed recreations of the moon landing conditions, further strengthening the case for its authenticity. With advanced understanding of physics and space technology, many argue that the moon landing was indeed real. The moon landing, a monumental achievement or the greatest hoax? We've traveled together through the corridors of history, delved into the anomalies of the footage, dissected the dilemmas of the Van Allen radiation belt, scrutinized the missing tapes and the lack of stars in the lunar photos, and debated over the technology of the 60s and the expert testimonies. Our journey has also taken us through the counter-arguments and modern analysis, presenting a more nuanced perspective to this enduring controversy. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered so far. We began with the historical context, the backdrop of the Cold War and the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, an era marked by political tensions and technological competition, a time when landing a man on the moon was not just a scientific endeavor, but a demonstration of national prowess. The stakes were high, and so was the pressure. Could this pressure have led NASA and the US government to stage one of the most elaborate hoaxes in history? A question that has continued to intrigue minds for more than half a century. We then moved on to the anomalies in the footage. The inconsistent shadows, the flag fluttering in the vacuum of space, the lighting irregularities. Skeptics argue that these inconsistencies point to a studio setup, a carefully constructed lunar landscape, a staged moonwalk. The counter-arguments suggest optical illusions, camera angles, and the peculiarities of lunar conditions as plausible explanations. The debate is far from settled, and the footage continues to be a hotbed of analysis and speculation. Next came the Van Allen radiation belt, a region of intense radiation that the Apollo missions would have had to traverse. Critics argue that the levels of radiation would have been lethal for the astronauts. Supporters counter with the fast transit time, the shielding of the spacecraft, and the specific trajectory taken to minimize exposure. Yet, the mystery lingers. Could the astronauts have survived the journey through this radioactive gauntlet? We then ventured into the realm of the missing tapes and the lack of stars. Over 700 boxes of transmission tapes mysteriously missing, photos from the moon with no stars visible in the lunar sky. Doubters see this as a deliberate attempt to hide inconvenient evidence. Defenders point to the high contrast and exposure settings of the lunar photos and the mundane explanations for the missing tapes. But the questions persist. Was there something on those tapes that we were not meant to see? Technology and expert testimonies were our next stop. The skeptics question if the technology of the 60s was capable of sending humans to the moon and back. They point to the primitive computers, the limitations of the technology. The defenders bring forth the ingenious solutions, the groundbreaking innovations, the testimonies of the experts who were part of the mission. A clash of opinions, a battle of beliefs. And finally, we explored the counter-arguments and modern analysis. the recent recreations of lunar conditions, the advanced understanding of physics and space technology, the testimonies of astronauts and scientists. The defenders argue that the moon landing conspiracies have been thoroughly debunked. The doubters maintain their stance, unswayed by the modern analyses. The controversy continues. So here we are, at the end of this journey, yet at the beginning of a debate. The moon landing, a monumental achievement or the greatest hoax? The evidence, the arguments, the counter-arguments, they all point to a complex narrative, a tapestry of history, science, politics, and human ambition. The quest for truth continues amidst our greatest achievements and our enduring controversies. The debate continues, highlighting our quest for truth amidst our greatest achievements. What's your take?